Hello, listeners, viewers. What's your favorite scary movie?
Let us know. Let us know.
Okay,
Welcome to the Let Us In podcast. I'm Emma of The Impact.
I'm Justine, just enough.
And I'm Crystal, aka Creepin' It's Spooky.
And surprise, Sydney, it's our Scream franchise episode.
All right, now we're getting into Crystal's favorite,
Yes! Let's talk about it.
Scream
I
5.
especially want to hear Crystal talk about this. You have
I
the
do.
strongest of feelings.
I feel like I like it the
I don't
most
know.
out of us, and you don't like it the most.
I can hardly
Yeah.
remember it. I get bored.
Oh, then
It
you
is
don't like it the most.
It is
No.
boring. It is. It's got some very boring moments to this movie, and I. Okay, let's get into it. Let's just. Where do we
Rip
Oh, and
off.
I definitely think the Billy ghost is dumb.
So
I
fucking
think it's
stupid. Oh
so
my
dumb.
god.
Billy's not someone we're supposed to be listening to.
No, and it cheapens the whole movie for that aspect. But I know it's not supernatural. I know it's a hallucination, but it
It's
feels almost
dumb.
supernatural, and it just does not fit the Scream franchise at all. It doesn't make any sense. And the fact that it's like he's like pointing out weapons to her on the floor to use at the end, like it's so stupid. I'm sorry. He's a hallucination. If she
I
doesn't know
mean,
the
it would
know.
make
I
weapons
more
didn't
there,
need
sense
like
if
that. I
she
didn't
was
need the
going to be a
hallucination.
killer. Like, if she was going to be a murderess, it would make more sense. Even though it would be still stupid, like the whole dream sequence in the third one, which I can live with it, but it's
I think it's a
dumb. I don't know.
poorly done red herring. Poorly done
it
red
is.
herring.
And
That's
the
all.
Are we supposed to think that she's killing people and doesn't know it? Because I
Yeah.
never got that. No, I
Yeah.
never felt that.
That's
That
what I'm
never felt
saying. It's a
real.
poorly done red herring. I definitely thought that she was just supposed to be hallucinating her dad and is a potential killer who's just been killing people because that is a huge movie trope. The killer who doesn't know they're a killer.
Barf.
I thought that's where they were going with it. Or
I
I felt
never
like they
even
were
thought of that,
really
so they
hinting to
sucked that.
Matthew Lillard because they brought him up so much in Scream 5 that I was like, damn, are they really gonna do it? Are they gonna bring him back? And not until the end. Like, I was starting to believe it when they talked about he wasn't the only killer.
Yeah, having
And
him
then his
related to
house.
Vince, like having
Yep.
him
And
be
related to him.
related to and yeah, bring it back to his house. As soon as I saw the house in the trailer for this movie, I was like, oh, they must be doing something with Stu. They must be. And then they missed their mark. Sorry, they can't do it now. They can't bring
Yes,
him back now. And
Matthew
if they
Lillard was
tried,
in the metal ghost face mask with the
Yeah,
flamethrower.
and
he was,
Stab
yeah,
8.
yeah.
Stab 8.
Oh yeah,
In
he's done
the
cameos throughout for sure.
in
But
what's his face? Dead Meat James cameo.
Yeah, the dead meat cameo. Yeah, I didn't really like the hallucination either. I also felt like if they were going to do that, they should have planned it better so that most of the scenes were pretty dark. They didn't have to rely so heavily on CGI because it was
yeah,
distracting. That I didn't
It
like.
just
That
also
was one of
doesn't
my
make
bigger
sense.
complaints. I don't mind it. The idea that Billy was just off his rocker and it's something that is inherited, I guess, to a degree. Like it's speaking to that, I guess. That's fine. I don't care if they want to do that, if they want to go that route.
I don't
But
know. I don't
it's
think you would do a
unnecessary.
murderer.
Just her finding out that she's related could have been enough, or like coming to terms with it and admitting it. We didn't have to have a
I
hallucination.
I think that the reveal of her being Billy's daughter should have been much later in the movie or like a better reveal. I feel like the way that it was revealed was so drawn out and stupid and way too early on in the movie. I don't know. I just there was
We
something
would have been
about trying to
questioning
tie
her
that
more
in.
if we didn't know why is the killer
Yeah.
specifically targeting them? Why does
Yeah.
our main character seem so stressed about she's and seem like she's
Hiding something.
yeah,
It would have
yeah.
been a better red herring if we didn't know that she was having issues, but she knew that she was Billy's daughter. And if
Sam
you were gonna go with
Carpenter.
like her having issues, she should have had these like weird outbursts or moments where it looked like she was
Yeah.
enjoying something she shouldn't, or like bothered by something while everybody else is bothered by, to like imply that she had those tendencies. I don't
But in
know.
like the
Yeah.
first 2 minutes that we meet her, she's already like taking pills
Oh,
30
Crystal,
seconds.
yes. That was like when I saw
Ridiculous.
that, it was an immediate ick.
Yeah, I know.
Oh
I was
god.
like, why did they put that in here?
She's in a
Literally, when
in a parking
yeah,
lot. Yeah, come on.
immediately, as soon as we meet her, that's the first thing she's doing is popping these
It's
pills. Like,
the way
bro,
we are introduced to the character. It's like, okay, hopefully she
yeah.
becomes a real character. blame the
I
actress a
hate when they
lot,
do
but
that.
it's not her. It's not the
Oh,
actress.
I thought
It's
it was
no,
her. I don't
I
think
no,
think
she
I
acted
disagree.
well.
I think
I don't think
partly
she
it
did
was
well.
her. Yeah,
She's
like,
a
I don't
stiff
think
actress. I haven't
she's
liked
stiff.
her in anything she's done.
I think
Yeah,
she's
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 very
very stiff.
flat.
I
Yeah.
think she's very beautiful. At time, maybe she'll become better.
Mhm.
Maybe she's got to get more comfortable, but I don't know. I think partly it was her, but
She's
partly it
boring to
was just how
watch.
the story went.
they all
She's
were
not
boring
good.
to watch. They all
Not
were
Jenna
boring.
Ortega. Jenna
No, I
Ortega
like Jenna
stole
Ortega.
every scene. So did Mindy Meeks.
Mindy Meeks was not boring. I didn't find her boring either. Yeah.
Yeah, her and her brother. I loved their banter with each other. Their like twin banter was so fun. I loved it. And
Yeah.
I love the scene in their house where they're talking about new movies and the way new movies are, and like the toxic fandoms out there who have their Reddit boards and they're angry about the sequel. It's like they were calling out the fans that were gonna hate this movie before they had the chance to hate it. I love that. I think that's so funny.
I think it was a little forced, and I've said this before. I think they threw that in there to try to make people not
Protect the
shit
yeah.
on their movie
Oh,
because they
it's
don't want to be the
fucking
toxic
smart. I
fandom.
love it.
It's
I
fucking
love it. I know it's not. It's smart. That is smart. That
It
is
is
really
deep.
good planning and marketing. I like it.
I think that they knew that they put out a shitty movie. When movie people make movies with like with the pill thing, within 10 seconds of meeting Sam, we see the pill thing. They put that in there because they think we're too dumb to pick up on it throughout the movie that she's going through these
And they're
things.
giving her
So,
hallucinations and they still think we're
yeah,
too dumb to get it. Like,
exactly.
okay.
Exactly. And that
I don't
immediately just like
disagree with that.
bad
No,
taste. It's a bad
no.
taste. And
But I
so I
watch a
think they
lot
put
of
that
commercial
toxic fandom thing.
trash, so that stuff doesn't bother me as much.
I'm
This is
fair.
supposed to be
But
a
this is
scream.
True.
this is a
Yeah.
Scream franchise movie and
Right.
they
So
kind of
I
tanked it.
still think that I don't think they tanked it. I think that's being aggressively
Okay, that is aggressive. You're right.
critical. I
Tanking it hard.
understand the criticisms. There are some good criticisms. I totally agree with. I do think that there's a lot of stuff that's just forced that doesn't need to be that way. There's a lot more subtlety to the franchise before. There is still even more exposition in the fourth one than needed to be to a degree. It's it's the subtlety that was lacking. They had to balance giving us nostalgia, returning characters while trying to develop a new story. I personally think their mistake was introducing too many new characters
Absolutely.
and like
That
an
is a big issue.
entire like baton handoff, but they didn't want to hand off the baton either.
Mhm.
Felt like a are we gonna hand
And I
it?
didn't care
Are
when
we
they
not gonna
died.
hand
I
it
just
off?
didn't care.
I
Except
didn't
for
care either.
Dewey, where I feel like they treated him like a throwaway character. If you're
Uh,
gonna kill Dewey, give him a better death. Like,
I
I mean,
like
in
this
like for the
death. I thought
story.
it was brutal. I
It
thought this was the
doesn't make
most brutal Ghostface.
sense.
It doesn't make
I
Amber
sense.
like
could not have done that, and it pisses me off to this
it.
day that
Are
that
you
was even a
saying Amber isn't strong enough because she's a
no.
girl?
Absolutely not. No, the fact that she's like 5 foot nothing. There's no fucking
Mm.
way that she had the upper arm strength to lift him up
She's got
over the head.
crazy strength. She's
He
crazy.
doesn't even die saving anybody. He just goes back to check. It just
Yeah.
feels.
And then
It
gets
I
feels.
love it.
distracted by his phone. What? Like why he
I
literally
I
love
love
that
upset
moment
crystals.
so
It
much
passes.
because they
what?
gave him such a cowboy ending. Look, Dewey's not going to suddenly in his 30s get brilliant in his 40s. Like he's going
He's
to
He
be
not
was
dumb.
dumb. He was
He's
never dumb. He
he
was just a
he
little
was never
naive.
that bright either. He made dumb
I
choices.
I don't think
disagree.
so. I think he was always smart.
He
He
made stupid
was.
choices all the
He,
time and got
he was a
distracted and
little
stabbed
green.
every time for it. Every time.
He was a little green in the first one, young,
Yeah.
newbie, but
He was
I
young.
don't think he's a genius, but I don't think he's
I'm
dumb.
saying he
No.
made dumb decisions before. There's no reason to think he wouldn't make a dumb
For
decision
the
now.
audience, for
But
a movie
he
that's trying to
also
really play to the audience, that I feel like if they're gonna kill Dewey, give him a good death scene. I don't mean like in
Yeah.
sense of brutality or being cool. It's a character we're saying goodbye to. I feel like there
right.
should
So
that's been
Agreed.
there.
I
I feel like
disagree.
there
I
should be
think it's a
more.
good death because he went out in this cowboy style way to prove himself that he did know better, that he was
That's
still protecting the
how
town.
cowboy to go back and check. I don't know. It felt like small.
No, he literally said, "No, we have to go back. We won't know who he is, and we need to know." And they always come back. It was a callback to the "they always come back" moments. And
Right.
he knows
He's
that
like an
because he's
expert.
always there when they come back.
Yeah.
I have to finish this. to protect y'all. And he has that whole moment where he's walking up and he's dropping the blanks from his 6-shooter. That's a very cowboy way to go for someone who's trying to redeem themselves out of
Sure.
guilt.
Sure.
It makes sense
I
to me. That's all I'm saying.
I respect how you feel about Dewey's death. I respectfully disagree.
Same.
Yeah.
They literally bring him back as an expert.
They shouldn't have leaned on him as being like the expert in this. They should have left it to Mindy Meeks Martin.
Well, he is technically because he's been through it so much. However, the fact that he goes back, makes that huge mistake, gets distracted by his phone, and then gets slaughtered by a 5 foot tall little tiny girl. No, hate it, hate it. I think it was disrespectful to his character.
He's just
Absolutely.
old.
He's not that old.
How old is
He's
David
got a limp
Arquette?
going.
Yeah, he's
He's
like in
little
his 50s.
Because he's been stabbed 9
crunchety.
times, Justine.
9 times. Now like 11.
I'd be slow too.
Jesus.
A psycho in their prime like Amber would take me, and you stick that knife in your gut and you're going to try to lift up away from it. I'm just saying. Makes sense to me.
All right.
I think we needed the heartbreak. I would have preferred it if it was Gale.
It makes sense for a legacy character to die, but I just
Agree.
didn't like how it went down. It wasn't treated like a legacy death, and in a way that
That's-
wasn't intentional. Hey, we're not going to make a big deal about it because we're subverting things. It just felt lazy.
Yeah.
To
At
me.
least make the
Yeah.
killer Richie to make it make more sense. But yeah, I would say put Dewey out in a better blaze of glory if you're going to kill off a legacy character. Emma, I agree. 100%. I would not rather have seen Gale, though. I think Gale is a solid final girl, and I'd be very sad to see her leave this franchise, actually. Because now that Sydney's gone, I want Gale to stick around.
We'll
So
get
what do you
to
think
that
they're
in
going to say about?
predictions.
Oh, we will get
We
to
will.
predictions.
We will.
Yeah, I don't know. I would have preferred if it was Gale strictly because I don't think Gale is as much of the heart of the franchise as Dewey and Sydney are
Really?
beloved. I don't think Gale is as beloved as those two.
I think she's quite
Oh.
beloved.
I
I
I'm
think
not saying
people
she's
love
not.
Gale.
I'm not saying she's not. I'm saying she's not as.
I think some people prefer Gale over
Interesting.
Sydney because Gale's more fierce.
She was a bully.
Gale's had no, but
Yes,
that's the
but-
thing. She's no longer like that though. So her character
Right. She's so
progression
sassy.
is so good. She's so sassy, but that's fine.
Yeah.
She's
I love
learned
a good
from
sassy
she's
hats.
learned from her exploitive ways writing books. She stopped writing the books about the true events. She starts writing
Did she?
fiction in
Because
the
I thought
fourth
she
one.
came to
In the fourth, that's the big thing in the fourth one that she was
in
trying
the
to write a
fifth,
fiction.
she showed up
She's
with a
trying
news
to
crew.
write a book, yeah.
I don't know if she went
That's
back to writing true crime.
In the fifth, she showed up with a news crew. That was the whole point that they had with Dewey.
Okay, yeah, she does. Yeah. She's still working.
But
on
she
it, okay.
belongs in New York. That's the thing. She doesn't belong in Woodsboro.
I just think
I
when
like
hear
Gale,
people
I'm
talk
sorry.
about the
Me too.
fandom, I hear people dislike Gale more than they would dislike Dewey. So it's more of just I prefer Gale to die instead of Dewey. That's it. But that didn't
Interesting.
happen, so it doesn't matter in the next
Well,
one.
like what they were trying to set up. They set up Dewey to have like he got fired from being the sheriff. Implied that. In
Yeah,
that way.
alcoholic.
He's an alcoholic.
Mhm.
He just is mourning and thinking about Gale, and Gale is ambitiously going forward with her career. I didn't like it. I didn't care for it. It wasn't for
Yeah.
me. I can understand why they wrote it, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
It wasn't for me.
Agreed.
Although I do feel like to create a new, because it's a franchise, and to create a new storyline, I feel like they did have to kill one of them. But
Yeah.
I just don't
it
like
could
how
have
they
gone
did
a
it.
little farther because it does feel like a half-assed attempt to hand off. But then if you weren't going to secure Nev Campbell for the next film, you should have just handed it off completely.
Because they wouldn't pay her enough. That's just bullshit. To me, how do you have Scream without Sidney Prescott? We don't have a killer that's the same the whole time. It's not like Freddy or Jason or Michael. It's Sidney. That's part of the magic of Scream.
Yeah.
Is that it's based around it's now you could even consider maybe her a hero as opposed to just a survivor. And without her, what are we doing? What are we doing
Guess we'll
if
see.
she's alive?
We'll get to that in our predictions.
I agree, Blair. No Sydney, no Scream. I'm
It's
gonna
gonna
watch
be
it.
weird.
I'm not lying.
So I did like fifth one. I don't have as many problems as you guys do with it. That's okay. That's okay.
I have
I'm
a question.
sad.
For you.
I'm sad for you guys, but
I've got a question
I'm
for you.
not.
Just
yeah.
really quick.
Again, Scream's not my favorite franchise, so not liking the fifth one isn't a big deal to me. It
I'm
doesn't
sad for
have.
Crystal one.
Yes. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not a big
yeah,
deal.
as a huge fan of the franchise, I was disappointed. Okay, one of the main reasons I was disappointed, and here's my question. I thought that the movie was too predictable. One of the biggest reasons that Scream is always so fun to watch is trying to figure out who the ghost face reveal is going to be. I found Scream 5 to be like I knew who they were right away.
Jack
It's
Quaid.
extremely predictable. Was it predictable to you, Justine? Because you liked this movie. Did you not know who they were? Was that shocking to you?
It was neither shocking nor predictable. It
Oh,
was
okay.
one of those things where I thought for sure, like, I was like, "Oh, it's definitely the boyfriend." And that's literally the joke throughout the whole entire movie is that it's him, and it's
Yeah.
him. So it's like, okay, so you can say that's predictable or not. The fact that they actually leaned into that predictability could be surprising. I don't know. Amber was a little bit more surprising. I actually was hoping she was a red herring the whole time.
I
Like she
hardly
was
registered who she was. This is one of those characters that we hardly knew. A lot of the new characters we hardly got to know them. What's her
True.
name? The new sheriff.
Judy Hicks.
Judy?
Yeah, son. Like they make a big deal about his death. For her, I feel like I didn't know Judy Hicks well enough for this to be invested in it. I feel like I definitely didn't know her son well enough. And some people think he was a red
Yeah.
herring, and I didn't
I
see that
know.
at all.
They
I
brought
would
Judy
have
back as
preferred
this
Judy
legacy
and
character.
Wes being the killers.
I feel like
Judy
that could
actually,
have been cooler.
I would have preferred Judy and Randy's sister being the killers.
Yeah.
That would have been
If you're gonna
perfect.
bring back a legacy character, for one, yeah,
Bring
leave
back
him.
legacy killers.
I agree,
Yeah,
Blair,
sure.
that the son's death felt like 6 hours long. It was a
Oh my
long one.
god.
Maybe a bigger deal
It
out of
is
his
more
death than
brutal.
Dewey's.
I think all the deaths in this one are more
No,
brutal.
but
There's
like we
way more
watch him
knife
go in the
handling in the opening.
shower and it's like, so long. It's so long.
It's
Open the
hilarious.
fridge, open the
I
cupboard,
loved all
open the
of those. I
fridge.
was literally giggling the entire
I
time in
do
theater.
love that for you. I love that
Yeah.
somebody loved
It
it.
was
It's
so
fine.
fun
I'm
for
not
me.
mad about it. I just didn't like it.
I was like,
I
"Oh, is it
saw
out? No. Oh, is it out? No."
I hated it.
It's a
I
pickle. I get it was the point, but Paco's a
I
To
weasel.
I
me, it
saw
was
somebody
making fun of
online.
jump scares, which is what I loved
It
about
was.
it.
Yeah,
Like,
it was, but I didn't like
Totally,
it.
but they took it too far.
I
I
love
think
it.
I saw this thing
Go
online
all
that
the way.
said his death scene would have been better. So when all of this stuff is happening, and then you see that front door open a little bit, I saw somebody online say the front door should have been Judy opening the door and him going over to close it on his mom because he just goes and closes this open door. She should have been
Yeah.
like barely alive, just like trying to get back
Getting
inside to let him
stabbed, was it?
Like Casey
or that.
That would
Yeah.
have been good. Yeah.
Yeah, like reaching for the door, like reaching for her son. I think that would have been more dark. But
That gives that Casey that's a
they
Casey
didn't
throwback
dive
if they
in.
did that. If they had
Yeah.
Judy, like, dying just on the other side of the door because she got, like,
Yes.
stabbed in the
Trying
neck a
to
little bit,
scream when she can't
very
Trying to
much
get
scream.
like
his attention,
Casey in
yeah.
the opening of 1, that would have been really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I
Which,
would have liked
like,
that.
if we want to get like a little nerdy about it, it's like the Casey Becker reaching out, she can't scream is ode to a scene in Halloween 2. Obviously, the first one, a moment with Laurie Strode. I know we're not but with it's a Laurie Strode moment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Look at Justine's face. She's like,
She's
just
like,
gonna let
Oh,
slide.
Halloween. Jamie Lee Curtis. Woo. No, yeah, I liked some of those moments. It's interesting because I think sometimes those things land with some people and sometimes they completely miss. For me, the fact that they kept going and kept taking it that way was really funny to me, and I liked that they went that far with it. I feel like if they didn't go far enough, it would have just been like every other jump scare that tries to misdirect you with the first attempt of a jump scare. So the fact that they kept going was I don't know, it was funny to me. But I like the idea of the door. That would have been cool. I think that this because it's more brutal, at first I was not into that. My first visceral reaction to this one being as brutal as it was, whoa, they're dragging these out too much. This feels a little too much like most other horror films. But then it worked for me because they had all those really silly moments where I was like, okay, this balances it out for me. The idea that they have the silly, like, jump scares, the obvious mirrored callbacks, like with Mindy on the couch and Randy on the couch moments. Those moments right there would be really stupid if it wasn't also brutal, in my opinion.
Even talking about this, and I'm not saying this to be rude, I can hardly remember it. I'm like, what happened there? And I've seen it 3 times. I watched it when it came out. I watched it for the trivia. I watched it for
Mhm.
this. I hardly remember. It just doesn't stick with me.
Yeah, I've watched it more than 3
I mean, it's
times.
not the worst movie I've ever seen by far. I've seen
No.
some pretty, but I just it's like Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I know there's a Weird Al Yankovic cameo in there, but I can hardly pay attention to find him. I just
Yeah.
don't remember it. It doesn't stick with me. Besides the parts that I didn't
That
care
does
for.
not sound rude. You just don't like the movie as much as me, and that's okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's allowed. I
Totally
remember the
Well,
movie.
oh well,
allowed.
yeah, of course you
I
think
don't
that's
know.
allowed, Crystal. You hated it.
No, I didn't hate it. Hate's a strong word. I had a lot of problems with it. It's like you said, it's not the worst movie you've ever seen. It's definitely not the worst movie I've ever seen. I think that it had
But
some great
it's the
parts.
worst Scream movie for you,
But
right?
it is the worst Scream movie. I loved the callbacks to the other movies. Like I thought they did that really well, but I think they focused on that a little too much. I feel like they
Oh,
were
it was
trying to.
nostalgia packed.
It was so nostalgia packed that I feel like that's where they were like, "Okay, what can we pull for this movie? What can we pull from this movie?" And I feel like that's how they focused, and they excelled at. I think they did that very well, but I feel like it dumbed the rest of the movie down a little bit.
Yeah.
I hate to say because it's the popular thing to say, but I do think 2 through 4 are fairly equal for me, but 5 is a little. I know some people that love it, or I don't know them, but I've seen people talk about how much they love it and how it's a
I
great
love
Scream
it.
movie
Yeah.
in its commentary. Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah,
some
I
people
love it.
it's their second favorite now. So I've seen
Yeah.
people say
Yeah.
it's their favorite of the franchise now, which
Yeah.
is mind blowing. But
well, it's very different than the other one, so that would make sense if it was their favorite over others because it's different.
I see what they were trying to do and what they did in some areas. So I'm a defender of Scream 5. It has modern commentary on horror. The problem I have is the modern commentary on horror sound like it came from director's perspective on modern commentary of horror and not the fandom's perspective on the modern commentary of horror. It felt a little out of touch because like you've addressed, Emma, nobody talks about elevated horror, but we do
Oh
talk about
God,
like
I
art.
wanted to die. Oh, you go ahead.
We do talk about artsy horror, and there is a huge swath of the horror fandom that is like anti A24. They do not
Yeah.
like things like the Babadook. They like their teen slashers. They do Scream. They like Freddy Krueger. They hate new horror. So there is that conversation, but nobody says elevated horror. And that's where it was a disconnect for me. If they would have not used that word, because that is a buzzword from people who don't know what they're talking about, like Time Magazine and critics over there who don't really care about horror anyways. People who don't care about horror being in the Oscars or getting snubbed, those people say elevated horror. We don't. So that part bothered me, yeah.
No,
But the
elevated
commentary
horror.
is spot on.
The term elevated horror was used very briefly within academic circles. And
Right.
now
Which tends to be discussed as out of touch.
it was very out of touch. It's interesting when people have the conversation of whether we want to call it art house horror or prestige horror or whatever, a more serious horror film or one that isn't a slasher. There can be a divide when it comes to horror fans, when it comes to types of horror movies people like. You can like one or the other, or you can like both. And I do get annoyed when people are like, there's A24 fans and then real horror fans. A24.
I hear that all
Is
the
it the
time.
brand that you think it is? A24.
But I hear that all the time.
I do.
all the
I hear it
time.
a lot. A24 started with distribution. They do produce films. And even if you don't like a lot of the films that come out of A24, they're looking for creator-based projects. And not just A24. There's Neon. There's a lot of companies that are doing this. A24 has successfully branded themselves in a certain way. Just like Blumhouse, which makes different kinds of horror movies, they've branded themselves in a certain way. So you have a certain expectation for the certain type of film. So I think that whether people want to shit on Blumhouse or A24, I think they don't understand how these are made. I don't know. And I don't understand how a lot about how movies are made. So I'm not like this
Get what they're
in person.
I get the sentiment. I get what they're trying to say. It's this there's also the same divide that happens with people who hate sequels or hate remakes. And then there's the people who give them a chance or love them more than the originals.
Blumhouse also came out with Get Out.
Yeah.
I don't like to generalize unless that are the head of the production house are shitty people. I don't like to generalize any of them. It's just I feel it comes down to what you define as a horror movie, which can be very different for a lot of people. Because I know most people that I've met that don't like horror movies. It's not their thing, which is fair. I remember there's two people I know that very specifically don't like horror movies, and both people I use are like, "What do you think of The Shining?" And they're like, "Well, The Shining isn't a horror movie," which to me is insane that you don't
Yeah.
think The Shining is a horror movie. It's got the dad going crazy with an axe. It's got ghosts. It's got this tension and horror element. It's a horror movie. I mean, but then again, maybe because a lot of people, when they think horror movie, they're thinking Halloween. They're thinking Scream. They're thinking of slashers specifically as horror.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, it's trivial. Like, is it important? No. As
Yeah.
of like fan to fan, no. Within the industry, when it comes to films getting funded and there being stigma about anything that's like a horror movie and getting these
Yeah.
films made, that's when it becomes something that matters. Right.
Yeah.
Get Out, when it was nominated for the Oscar, it was put in the comedy. Like there, yeah, it has a lot of comedic elements. It has a
But,
lot of
like,
funny moments, but there's a lot more horrifying elements in that movie.
yeah.
I don't know how to fix it, guys.
Our Blair is saying, just found the official statement from A24 for investors. A24 is synonymous with incredible content, and their commitment to supporting creative talent is unmatched. I guess that's their brand. Yeah, they are supporting creator-based projects. I think that when it comes to their special editions that they have, they're very visually striking. Right? Like when you buy, when it comes to like the script book in the front and the logo, and it's come to me like with Neon, I don't think of a specific look besides the banner. And with Blumhouse, I assume most people in the horror community know who Jason Blum is. I don't know. He's a producer. He's not like a character or anything like that. Yeah, it's pretty well known. I don't know the branding of it. I don't know. I think there is a specific intention, and I do think that A24 has started choosing more specific films that they think are expected, like to either fund or to distribute films that are expected of them more than they used to.
So, like, I've always noticed that there's people who like automatically hate sequels before they even come out. They automatically hate remakes. And I feel like partly one of the reasons why maybe I also liked Scream 5 more than a lot of people is because I'm absolutely not one of those people. I tend to like remakes. I tend to like sequels. Historically, sequels maybe have a worse record than remakes, but remakes typically are not bad. So,
I like remakes though.
Mhm.
I do. I like a lot of remakes and sequels.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like that's what it spoke to though in this film. It talked about that a lot, about toxic fandoms rejecting remakes or toxic fandoms,
Yeah.
not even toxic fandoms, but just the conversation around sequels and the continuation of a franchise like going into the ground. And
Oh
I
yeah,
liked
blame the
that.
fans. Blame the fans.
I don't
Us
think they did. That's
regulars.
not what I meant.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. Blame the normies.
I'm
Blame
the
the
ones that are
littles.
extreme about it who become killers to make their own sequel.
I'm just going to say the elevated slash prestige or art house horror versus more commercial horror or whatever you want to say. It's kind of hard to divide them because I think that you can find art in anything if you look hard enough, almost anything. But it's clear that there's a class divide there a little bit, or an implied class divide, or it's this weird thing that, like, if I were to say, I don't like slashers, it's like this automatic projection of that folks could see as like she's a snob. I love slashers. That's not the truth.
Right.
It's like when people make bad faith assumptions. It just like because someone has a preference about movies, it doesn't make them a snob or it doesn't make you
Well,
cool.
it's around woke horror, the woke horror
Oh God,
discussion, right?
don't! I just
No,
cringe
but
in
it
my
is though.
entire body.
But it is. That's what I'm saying. The
Yeah.
people I hear complain about woke horror are the same people who say like, new horror is so bad. Classic horror is where it's at. Back in the 80s. 80s is the
Yeah.
best genre. Slashers. I just want to see a bunch of dudes killing people, babysitters, topless scenes. Those are the divides I'm talking about.
Oh no, and it's fair that that's your preference.
That's your
Yeah,
preference.
but
Don't get me wrong. I like Piranha 3D. We already talked about this.
I love the 80s. I love the 80s
Yeah.
movies. I love the good ones. I love the bad ones. I love the.
But there was also art horror back then.
Didn't The Begotten come out in the 80s? Yeah, I'm pretty
don't
sure that
know.
came out in the 80s.
I
It's
don't
on
know.
YouTube. Oh my God, you guys.
Woke
That's
horror and elevated horror are both the dumbest terms. They're
Yeah.
stupid. It bothers me, but I feel like woke horror is used by toxic fans, not elevated.
Well,
Woke
it's
is.
woke goes beyond, and whenever I see it, I'm like, oh, people really do talk this way. That's disappointing.
No, right?
Oh,
It's always
yeah.
so surprising.
You see it in any fandom, whether we're talking Star Wars or Marvel or anything, and no fandom is immune to the
Right,
talking about the woke problem, which is usually
right.
about something like they cast a person of color in a certain role or what have you.
Yeah.
When someone uses the term woke horror, they're not saying, "Hey, this message is disingenuous." The message is right. I'm not talking about anything specific, and it's fan service without actually giving meaning and jobs to people that are not in the majority. It's never
They're not
that. It's
talking about
always like,
pandering. No, they're
no.
never talking about pandering. They're talking about how the guy that they like is their favorite character is not white anymore or is a girl now. That's
Like with She-Hulk,
Yeah.
and there's all these dudes saying, "I've read She-Hulk since." No, you didn't. Not many people were reading She-Hulk as a child. I'm sure there are people, but
yeah.
I don't believe you. I don't.
So
I
not to
don't
get us
believe
off
you.
on a tangent, I apologize. The point I was trying to make is typically when these terms are brought up and we're talking about divides in horror, they're not always genuine. They're not even black and white things that you can divide. I know a lot of people who say that they prefer the 80s decade, they prefer older horror to newer horror, they prefer slashers to A24. I hear a lot of people say that, but they'll say, I love Tusk, and that's A24. They'll say, "Oh, but I did like Hereditary," or "I don't like Hereditary, but I do like Jordan Peele." It's art. You're going to take it how you
Yeah.
want to take it. I think that we are a little less today than we were at the beginning of anytime like social media takes off. So anytime like TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, any of those take off to any degree, you're going to have an influx of people who have very staunch opinions and people who have very differing opinions who are the loudest. That's going to always happen. But I think today we're more accepting of different opinions around horror than we used to be. And I think we're less likely to hide our true feelings about certain films than we used to be.
Yeah.
I remember being embarrassed I loved Evil Dead, the remake. Because
Really?
I would say, "Oh my god, I loved it. It was so good." And people were like, "Really? It's so stupid. It's nothing like the originals. The originals are
Oh,
so much better." And I remember feeling like, "Oh, am I like an idiot?"
no,
I
because I
mean,
fucking love that movie.
I love it too, but I remember feeling that way about certain films that came out where people were so adamant that it was trash. And I was like, same with
Yeah,
Scream 4. I remember how bad Scream 4 was received, and I was like, I loved
it
it.
was.
I loved it, and people hated it. And I felt stupid. Like, am I stupid? Am I missing something? I don't feel that way anymore. I'm 35. I have my opinions. They're gonna be
I
different.
would
I
say
don't
I
give a
speak
fuck.
my mind, and I
Like,
like
yeah,
me and you disagree on Scream 5, but we can have like mature discussion about it and hear
right.
each other's opinions and not
Yeah.
bash each other and
You
call
just
ourselves
can't talk bad about the
stupid.
Batman, Emma. That's it.
I didn't talk bad about it. I just felt like it wasn't a tight script. I felt like they were
The
I love
trying.
hearing other people's opinions, man. Like, Emma, I'm not saying you don't. I'm not. This
I
opinion
didn't
in
take it
general.
that way. I did not take
been
it.
Okay,
so
an opinion
adamant
is great.
against her before.
No.
I did.
Batman.
I just because I thought the Batman with Robert Pattinson was okay. Like I just think it's okay. I don't
Literally
mean it.
the first time I felt so strongly, like I had to convince you.
Wow.
I was like, damn, Justine, calm down. You don't need to convince her to your side. Like, I had to like tell myself to chill out on that one. So
Yeah.
I was upset that John died in the end of the movie because I was hoping Falcone would be in it more, but I don't know. It was a good
we
movie.
don't
I
need to
liked.
get
I
into
liked.
Batman. I'm sorry.
It's
I thought it was a good movie. I just didn't think it was a great movie for me. For
Yeah.
me, in general, it's like
Yeah.
just my just
That's fair.
tastes.
Fair.
That's fair. We're allowed
The
to
Riddler
say
was
that.
too militant. I didn't like the militant aspect of the Riddler. A lot of choices for him did make sense though.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like we missed so much, but that's what's
We
so
were
hard.
3 hours.
I know, but it's just that's what's so hard about talking about these franchises that have existed within our
Yeah.
consciousness, the public consciousness, beyond the horror community. I feel like it's just hard to get everything in there.
I
There's a lot
was
of
really
facts.
worried about that in the beginning, but I feel like we did a good job talking about it like friends talk about a franchise. And the more we talked like that, the more relaxed I got, where I was like, do you remember this part? Oh my God, I love that part. That was fun. So if you guys liked this episode, make sure you hit that like and subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you get notified of our next episode when it drops. If you did not watch this live on Twitch, you probably should go subscribe to our Twitch so that you can follow us there, where we do behind the scenes filming and you can see us make all of our silly mistakes before it gets edited and put on YouTube. Also, don't forget that you can join our Patreon if you want to help us support this podcast. Making a podcast does cost money. It's not a lot. Do what we need to do though. So for Twitch, the link to all of those links are there in Twitch. You guys can see it. It says links. And for YouTube, the links to all of that will be below in the description and our link tree. Go follow all of them. All of the links.
Or I'll gut you like a fish.
Until
won't
next
get cut.
time.
Bye.